Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here and checking out the series. You know what to do. Like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. I'm so excited today because I've got the band Inhaler here. They've got a brand new record called Cuts and Bruises. It is one of the best records out this year. Hello, guys.
Hello. Thanks. That's what an introduction.
That was very nice. Thank you.
It's all true, though. I love what you guys are doing here, and I know the bar was set high. I know lots of questions, and you know the word sophomore album has probably been thrown around so much at this point, but it is impressive, and it's not an easy thing to do to follow what you guys had already put in play there. A lot of my favorite albums are sophomore albums because it sort of has that back against the wall feeling to it.
Definitely.
Is that sort of what you all had going into this? Because I don't even know when you had the time to make a record, as much touring as you did.
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle for us, but at the same time, like, I think the reward outweighs any frustrations you have making it. I mean, we say like we only had like a few weeks to write it or whatever, but we were blessed with like a decent amount of time. But that's only because we sacrificed our days off in order to do it. So we'd come off tour and go straight into the studio, and it was very much like a kind of hothouse environment. But it worked out for us.
Yeah. I mean, as they say, there are 24 hours in a day. That's true. So plenty of time to get things done.
Sometimes 27 hours in a day when you work in our studio.
Right. Do you all feel like it needed to be anything? Like, did this record, again, you know, and it's always unfair doing a comparison because it's just the next step. But when you are introduced in such a way, did this record need to be something? Did it need to say something?
We never really go into the studio with a master plan really of what the record be or what it should be. That kind of just unravels as the process goes on. But eventually, as these songs were starting to come to fruition, we were writing more and more the subject matter of friendship, companionship, longing to get back to a certain place. That all just became a lot more prevalent as time went on. Nowadays, though, like with writing new songs, we start to have a bit more of a conversation about what something might potentially be before we actually go into a studio, because we're terrible at knowing when to hit the brakes and just stop and leave something be. So, you know, that's something we're working on a little bit.
It is interesting to hear you all talking about, you know, the looking back part on this record, because when I hear it, it's like, it's, you know, so much of songwriting, that's what you do. You look back to whatever you're looking back to, recently or far, but there's almost this look in a nostalgic way, if that makes sense. Which is so interesting, you know. I mean, you're early 20s or whatever, and that's usually when that nostalgia hits us for whatever reason. That's when we, like, you can almost still smell childhood, and you're already reaching for it.
Yeah.
Why was that such a reoccurring theme on the record, if you can verbalize it?
I have no idea. I think it was because we started playing when we were so young. Like, there's a couple songs in the album that are about being in a band and like the experience of it. And Now You Got Me is like about that pact that you make right at the beginning of it all. And that makes us feel nostalgic, you know, like we've been playing for so many years. Like some of us have been together for like 10 years, you know, which is just wild to think about. And I think that having that kind of be the talking point of some of the songs, you're just inevitably going to go back there and look for it and try and conjure up some imagery, and you know, because it makes the songs feel a bit more personal, you know. And yeah, you're right, that nobody's really said that to us yet about this album, but it definitely was. There was a lot of like nostalgia in it, even like a song like Dublin and Ecstasy. You know, I guess you're meant to be looking forward on your second album, but we were looking backward.
Because we tour so much, it always feels like we're playing catch up, whether it's like in our own personal lives or in the band. So it's like we could do like 6 to 8 months of touring, and then when we go to write songs, it's like pre-tour. It's like back when we were home before, because we've only done gigs. And then I think when we got into the second album and we had got to tour the first album after like lockdown kind of ended, then it was just all we could write about. So we just wrote about being on the road. And then if it wasn't that, it was before, and that's probably where the nostalgia comes from, because it's like we didn't even really do much during lockdown when it came to being creative. We tried our best, like everyone, but yeah.
Just watch a lot of Seinfeld. That's what ends up happening during a pandemic. Now I know the person I am during a pandemic anyway. And so no, but it almost, it even feels like a marker in the sand, and I won't go too much further into that, but there is that dividing line. It does feel like, because it's not looking back, to me as a listener, I should say, it doesn't feel like it's looking back as to something that you were just doing. It almost feels like that was us then, but it's not us now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right about that. I think we don't want to, we still want to be moving forward as human beings and as friends and stuff, and find the next step. But I think, sometimes you have to consult your past in order to figure out your future, something stupid like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're still trying to find that kind of body of work where we're kind of like, okay, this is like a new thing that we're all going to jump into, and kind of it's going to change the band a bit. I think it's kind of important for us to not rush into like trying to do some big grandiose like concept-y thing, and just do what feels natural, which has just been like the kind of formula we've had for the last 2 records.
Works well. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it yet anyway. So
yeah.
And the way the album starts, I mean, just to keep you satisfied is such a cool song. I started thinking, that the bridge, the breakdown in that riff, I feel like could have been its own song entirely. Do you all get those moments like, oh my God, this is so good? It's only going to be here though.
Breaking that song, it always reminds me of Fashion with David Bowie. It's got that, I don't know, sort of like brooding 80s lick to it. Though I'm quite happy you mentioned that, actually. That's really nice.
To answer your question, I think we actually love breaks, and we love middle eights, and we love intros, we love outros. So I think we often do them a lot easier than we do the rest of the song. So we've got like the amount of songs we have where it's like a just to keep you satisfied situation, where like we have like an amazing break, but we just don't have any other bits. I think it's the other bits that when we get them, we're all pretty pleased with it. With Satisfied, it was like the tune was already there, so then we kind of doing stuff like the break was like the fun part, where we just kind of basically just messed around.
Yeah, I'm reminded. You brought up Bowie. Usually, I'm flanked with Bowie posters all behind me. I'm in a different location today, but I also think of like Neil Young, Cinnamon Girl. At the end of it. At the end of it, he goes into this whole different riff, and I keep thinking that song's been around for 50 years, and I'm thinking for 50 years he's never taken that riff and made a whole song of it, and it was a throwaway, jam at the end for 10 seconds. It's that would drive me crazy as a musician. That's all.
That guy's a machine. I remember reading something where like Bob Dylan kind of said like, I have all these ideas for songs, and if they don't turn into songs quickly, I kind of just let those songs go, and like I don't even archive them. I just just destroy them in my head and just never go back there. And I'm sure that can't be true. Like, if you have an amazing part for something, it's going to come up. Like I think Paul McCartney said he does that all the time.
Might take years, but it will eventually have its time. Like
he said recently that the reason he thinks one of the reasons the Beatles songs were so catchy and so good was that they didn't have phones and they couldn't record every little bit that they were doing. So they'd write a song, and then the next they'd write down what they could, and they'd remember what they could, and the next day they'd come in and be like, oh, what was that bit? And they just sing a very like simplified version of it, and it would be very catchy, and like you only remember the great bits. You don't remember like kind of average stuff. So to answer your question, thanks.
I mean, you got to have a lot of trust in yourself, in the universe, whatever, that that's going to come, because it also feels like that's probably like some kind of type A, type B person, like I can just let go, it'll be there. Versus the person that's like every little thing's got to be documented. I might be that one instead. I don't know that I would have that complete faith.
I think we might be type C.
Is that just the combination of the two?
I think
Neither.
that's not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah. I don't know, just not knowing what we're doing. Yeah.
No, that's, I mean, you mentioned Dublin Ecstasy, and that's a great example, because that is something that was in the past in one form and sort of pulled into it. And that's another, I think, high mark of this album, because of the mood. There is a contrast with that song as to where most of the rest of the album kind of sits and plays around with.
Yeah, it feel maybe we were going for more optimistic melody lines a couple of years ago, when we were wide-eyed teenage. We still are pretty wide-eyed, but pushing on. Yeah, we're pushing on about 20. What age are we now? 23, 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, feeling old, man.
We act like 40-year-old men now. It's pretty uninspiring to watch.
Yes. Honestly,
but on stage we're good. It's just everything else.
Yeah, we put all of our efforts into the gig.
Yeah,
not a bad place to put it. And the album, don't sell yourself short
yeah,
there.
Yeah,
that's what we feel like a 40-year-old man. It's because we've done that already.
Yeah. That's a song like that, though. I mean, it does make me wonder, because you think about bands with the vaults. Like, these days we don't have B-sides like bands used to have, and I so miss B-sides. Usually those were the songs that a lot of time they just didn't make the album, or they weren't fully formed, but they end up being something special for the fans. For you all, for these sessions, I mean, are there other like Dublin and Ecstasy would have been a cast off? It didn't work for the first record. It came back later. I mean, how many other songs do you all have that have that potential?
I think we wrote like something like 40 different pieces of music for this record, and I don't know how many roughly were like fully fledged songs, but I don't know, they could come back up again in the future. I mean, the other day in a sound check we were playing old songs that we hadn't played since we were like 17 or 18, and there was some that were there was a very obvious reason why we haven't done them in so long, and others where we kind of just like, oh, there's something still quite good in that, so it's exactly like what we were saying earlier about just like some ideas, if they're good enough, they can take years to come back and have their time. It might not just be right there and then.
Sometimes you just don't have whatever it is that you need to complete it, like the knowledge of, we have so much more knowledge of music these days, and knowledge of like how to be in a studio and how to like finish a song. I think back then it was just kind of like, oh yeah, it'll write itself, you know what I mean? Eventually, somewhere down the line, if we keep playing it enough. But yeah, I think we know a lot more now. So
our producer, and who did the first record as well, he always uses the analogy that if a part is good enough, or if a song is good enough and it will have enough legs to speak for itself, it will always just go, put me in, coach. It'll become apparent, like as time goes on, which is the obvious one to put in for the team.
Then and just to add to that, there's also the fan perspective, and I'll hit on that one again. It's an easy example with Dublin and Ecstasy. I mean, you all had said the fans took to that one earlier than even you all did, and it's interesting, like the songs that you don't think are finished, we are still happy with a lot of the time, and you probably have songs like that with your favorite bands as well. It's like, oh, that one wasn't a great song, or we didn't, and you hear the demo version, you're like, oh my god, that was great, what were you thinking?
Yeah. I think it is often those kind of, I guess, imperfections that people like, but yeah, for us they just don't sound good. So it's like, and that's just, I think that's a normal part of being an artist, is like not settling, and we don't want to just like churn songs out because fans like them and we don't, because I just feel like that's could get slippery to the point where we're making stuff that we don't want to make. But we did believe in that song. We knew the fans were right. We just didn't know how to portray it for a while, and it went through some changes.
They pointed us in the right direction of the version of the song, because we all love the song. It was just we had done a version of it in the studio that we just kind of all were like, oh, maybe this just is shit. You know what I mean? And then the fans were like, no, it's not. It's this version we love. And so we did
a number on it.
Thank goodness. And
it's been going down well live. Like, it was definitely the right call, so we're really happy about that.
Well, speaking of live, I'm excited. I'll get to see you guys. It's not for a while. You're going to be, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky here. You'll be here in September for Bourbon and Beyond. Same day as The Killers and Duran Duran and Brittany Howard and Gaslight Anthem. It's a good day to be down here. So
yeah, I'm excited. It's got the best poster of the summer as well. I love the poster for that festival.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's a great festival too. How long do you guys spend dressing up hats for each market every day? Because I feel like that's got to take a lot of time.
we don't even make them. Like the fans just bring them to the gigs. I don't even know where it started. It started
Just throw them on stage.
They just throw them on stage. It's become like a thing now that they just do.
But it's only in the US.
Yeah, no, they do it in the UK a little bit as well. Yeah, and it's very. We love it.
I don't know, I mean, we think we just thought it was an American thing, but it seems like it's just at our shows.
Yeah, I think it started in America, and then on the last tour, and then by the end we had like 1,000 cowboy hats on the bus. Our tour manager Gary was just like, "Lads, what the fuck? Like, what are we gonna do with all these hats?" So we just gave them back to fans and
try not to give the same hat to the same fan.
Yeah. And stuff like that. So, but it's great to see that like there's a community. Like even seeing the people line up outside the gigs, like they'll line up from like 12 the night before and like all sleep on the curb and like talk to each other about music and whatever. And it's like we're like, you're absolutely nuts for doing that, but it's great to see that it's lovely. Like there's a community there.
Yeah, that's always beautiful if you can cultivate that as a band. My son's 15 and he's just starting to come into his own on live shows and everything, and he said, I don't understand why people follow a band for multiple shows. It didn't occur to him yet, and I'd done that when I was younger.
Really?
Like late 90s, early 2000s. Like I went on 2 or 3 years of just a string of Pearl Jam shows. You know, that I caught on to that one, and it was as much about the music as it was the community that you fall into, because it's that like-minded thing, and that's such a fun experience to be a part of. Like I'm so happy that I had that moment in my life, so I can completely relate to them.
Yeah, because it is just like it's what we have, but the fans have the same thing, because we just have a relationship with each other through music, which is like stronger almost than other friendships, that because we have that in common. And I guess our fans have the same thing, is that they all have gone to shows and they go to each venue and meet each other and stuff. So yeah. Can't complain.
For a good reason. Again, I'll say it, Cuts and Bruises is so damn good. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm so happy we got to talk about it today. I can't wait to see you guys down the road.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
See you in,
hopefully meet you there as well.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it today. It was a real honor.
Thanks very much, Kyle.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Kyle.
Right.
Take it easy.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.